Have you ever had someone provide advice and then later you realized how right they were and you wish you had followed that advice? Well, let's not make that mistake. Let's follow the advice in chapter 27 of the book of Proverbs. Hey guys, and welcome back to God's Word Made Simple by Simple Servant Ministries. My name is Aaron Hawk, and if this is your first time visiting with us, I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. God's Word Made Simple is an online discipleship ministry dedicated to taking God's Word and making it simple. We want to help you understand God's Word, apply it to your life, and grow in your relationship with the Lord. And by the way, if you appreciate this content at some point, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn that bell notification to all so you don't miss any future videos. We would really love to have you as part of our family. Okay guys, so let's jump back into Proverbs chapter 27, and we're going to start in verse 1 and go through verse 16 today. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. And that is such an important verse, and this is a theme throughout the scriptures. Don't boast about tomorrow. Don't think that you have everything planned out tomorrow, because you don't know what life is going to bring. So plan for tomorrow, but act in today, right? That's the best advice that we can give. We don't know if we're even going to be alive tomorrow, much less what kind of calamity may come. How many of you, a little over 2 years ago now, how many of you 2 years ago would have thought that there was any chance that almost all the churches in the country would say, nope, nobody's coming in the doors for a year, or however long the churches decided not to do it? Right? How many of you thought that that would ever happen? I mean, you would have thought that you were nuts. If you had told me that all the churches in the country would suddenly decide to close their doors 2 years ago, I'd have said either you're nuts or the government has finally decided they don't like Christians and they're cracking down. Neither of those was the case. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Plan for tomorrow, live in today. Be present here today. All right, verse 2. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. Yes, being self-congratulatory is not helpful. Now, it's one thing to internally acknowledge your accomplishments. In fact, this year represents 25 years of me teaching martial arts. I am internally proud about that, but it's not something that I go around bragging about. Now, I do realize the irony of the fact that I just mentioned that in this video, but I always use personal examples in my videos, so hopefully that doesn't come across as arrogant. But the point is, let other people praise you. Don't praise yourself. Don't be all self-congratulatory. One, self-deception. We've talked about that in chapter 26. Self-deception is a bad thing and it is a dangerous thing. But two, even if you're being honest, it just doesn't come across well to people. Let other people praise you. And if they don't, oh well. All right, verse 3. A stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than them both. And boy, is that true. If you have ever been around a fool, and again, check out chapter 26. I go pretty in-depth into the nature of a fool in I think it was 2 videos that we did chapter 26 in. It might have been 3, but check out those videos, and you'll see what I'm talking about as far as the fool. But yeah, it is just not worth being involved with a fool, because a fool, by definition, doesn't listen to anyone. Wrath is fierce and anger a flood, but who can stand before jealousy? And if you've ever seen someone that is truly jealous, you will understand the truth of that statement. Wrath is fierce, anger is a flood. Both of those are emotions that you don't want somebody else having toward you, because nothing good, only bad stuff happens. But jealousy, it's on a whole nother level. We've all got the crazy girlfriend or boyfriend story. Maybe you don't personally. I only dated my wife. I never dated anyone else. But we all know people, in other words, that have had that happen. Jealousy's in its whole different ball game. So be careful, and be careful that you don't allow yourself to become that person. That's also the point in the Proverbs. Not just avoid those people, but don't allow yourself to become that person. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. And that's the truth. A rebuke, and a biblical rebuke, is someone who loves you enough to speak the truth into your life. Hey, you need to knock off the online porn addiction because you're going to ruin your life and your family. That's lovingly rebuking somebody. That is better than love that is concealed. Somebody that has all the warm fuzzies and is there for you. And if you ever fell flat on your face, they're there for you. But if it's concealed love, if they're not doing something about it, if they're not helping you in your life, what good is it? People don't like being rebuked most of the time, although the Proverbs also teach us that a wise person actually does love correction. But love that's concealed is useless. All right, verse 6. Faithful, continuing the thought, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. See, a real friend, someone who actually loves you and truly cares about you, they're going to have to speak truth into your life sometimes. I gave you the example of calling someone out for an online porn addiction, but what about someone who says, do you realize you've been kind of arrogant here lately every time you do this or that, and they kind of explain, or someone that says, I love you too much to let you keep going down this path. You don't treat your wife very well. And those are hard things to hear, and they hurt. But someone that really loves you is going to speak truth into your life because they want what's best for you, not for you to wallow in sin and self-deception. But deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. And basically, an enemy will flatter or do whatever they can to build you up until they can knock you down. But I think we're also supposed to take from this the implication that not speaking the truth in love, and you have to speak both the truth and do it in love. By the way, there's a good book called The Grace and Truth Paradox. It's not an affiliate link as of the recording of this video, but maybe by the time the video is published, I don't know if we'll have the affiliate link set up by then, but either way, I'll put a link down in the description for the book, Grace and Truth Paradox. It's a great book talking about speaking the truth in love. All right, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. I think this is also implying that if you don't speak the truth in love, you're actually acting as an enemy, and that's true. A sated man loathes honey. It's like when you're in a sugar coma, you've had so much dessert, you just can't handle even the thought of another grain of sugar. A sated man loathes honey, but to a famished man, anything bitter is sweet. Yeah, see, when you've overloaded, you don't want anything else. But to somebody who's desperate, even something that would be considered undesirable is desirable. To someone who's starving, any food is good, right? I mean, I'm not an overly picky eater, but compared to some people, yeah, like I'm not eating snails. I don't like my food and my meat still mooing. So compared to some people, yeah, I'm picky. But if I was actually literally starving, I'd be willing to eat anything that I knew wouldn't kill me. So perspective is important, and the spiritual application of that is that sometimes you spend your whole life being fed spiritual truths to the point that you become a spiritual glutton because you're not then also teaching other people. See, the best analogy that I've ever heard for true discipleship is the source of life, the source of water is Jesus. And picture a stream flowing down into a pool. The pool is us. And then another stream is being fed by the overflow of that pool or lake or whatever you want to call it, right? Well, if you cut yourself off from the source, you're going to be drained by the feeding. But if you are receiving from the source, but you're not feeding others, it's stagnant water that's eventually going to overflow its banks, right? I don't have time to fully flesh out that analogy, but you can take it from there. A sated man loathes honey, but a famished man, any bitter thing is sweet. See, I think that there is a spiritual application to this, that somebody who is hungry Anything they can receive from the Lord and the scriptures is good. But somebody who's become sated is somebody that has an overload of the scriptures. And no, you can't search out the scriptures and come to a point where you don't need to learn anything else or you can't learn anything else from them. But you can come to the point where the amount that you're taking in is overwhelming the amount that you're putting out. And that's when you need to be serving and potentially teaching. I strongly recommend that you be discipled in how to teach, but you need to pour your life out into others as well. All right, verse 8. Like a bird that wanders from her nest, so is a man who wanders from his home. Like a bird that wanders from her nest, so is a man who wanders from his home. The idea here, I believe, is a bird that wanders from its nest. What's going to happen to the eggs in the nest, right? The nest is going to be destroyed. The eggs are going to be destroyed or eaten. So is a man who wanders from his home. I believe this is supposed to imply someone who is going out and just going out into the world to be promiscuous or whatever, or someone who's just never at home, maybe the workaholic. The home then is ravaged in their absence. Statistics prove a male influence in the home is vital, just as is a female influence. But so often it's the female that has all influence, and males have little to no influence in the home for various reasons. Sometimes there's just not a father, as was the case for me. And sometimes there's just an absent father because they're a workaholic or they just don't want to connect with the family. Either one, the net result is the same, and statistics demonstrate that a fatherless home, the children, and especially the male children, are very likely, they are much, much, much more susceptible to committing crimes and to living a life of crime and getting in a lot of trouble. Don't underestimate the importance of the male influence in the home. Verse 9, oil and perfume make the heart glad, so a man's counsel is sweet to his friend. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, so a man's counsel is sweet to his friend. See, I remember being single, and I'm not the biggest person on perfumes and things like that. I almost never wear cologne. But I still remember being single, and I also think about one of the Harry Potter movies. I believe it was Ron that said something like, they smell so good. I still remember being single, and, some girls, some people just put way too much on, and that's just offensive. But some girls had, they would pass you by, and it was just the right amount of some sort of a perfume or a lotion or something. And it was very enticing. It was exciting, not even necessarily in a sexual way, but just exciting in the sense of, wow, that's really pleasant to be in that person's presence, right? Oil and perfume make the heart glad. So a man's counsel is sweet to his friend. See, we've talked a lot in this chapter as well as in the last couple of chapters about accountability, and that's actually coming up in verse 17, iron sharpening iron. When you are in a good relationship with someone and they are an accountability partner, whether it's a formal accountability relationship, which, by the way, I strongly recommend that you have, or whether it's just someone that you live life with and you speak truth into each other's lives, because that's really what accountability ought to be, those conversations should be that refreshing and exciting time. It should be, wow, I didn't realize that I was doing this. I'm glad you helped me catch this before I went further down a bad path. All right, verse 10. Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother far away. And this is kind of a common sense thing, right? Make sure, and this is just talking about strategy, right? I love using that word strategery ever since Bush originally said it. I just get a kick out of it. But anyway, I like using, or this is really talking about strategy. This isn't talking about using people, but it is talking about taking advantage of what's already there, just not the negative sense of taking advantage, right? Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend. So in other words, make sure that you keep your relationship solid with those around you, because honestly, in the day of trouble, who are you going to go to? Someone who's all the way across the country or someone who literally lives a few doors down? Better is a neighbor who is nearer than a brother who is far away. See, when trouble comes, you need help now. I remember one time we had a medical issue, it was a year or two ago now. We had a medical issue in our home with my wife, and I called one of the people just down the road to come and help with the kids while I dealt with that, because while my mom lives fairly close to us, she's still about an hour away. That's not even across the country. I needed somebody then, not somebody later. All right, so don't forsake your own friend or your father's friend. In other words, keep those relationships alive for the sake of the relationship, and there is strategic value for doing so. And I think that this is especially poignant, or I should say this is especially observable in smaller towns. I live in one now. I know if there was an emergency, there are any number of people that I could call immediately, and there's some of them that are even just always going to be available because they are retired or whatever. So it's a benefit of being in a smaller town that there's any number of people that I could call at a moment's notice if there was a real emergency. But you should also have people around you in general in life wherever you are. Other places that I have lived, I've only lived here for, a year and a half, something like that. I think it's been about a year and a half that we've been in this ministry position. We've always had people around us like that, though. And that's just part of being in a good friendship relationship with other people. But Solomon is reminding his son that there is also strategic value to having those relationships. That's why he's saying don't forsake them. Even if only for self-interest, which is not what he's proposing, but even if it was only for self-interest, keep those relationships going. All right, verse 11. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may reply to him who reproaches me. How do you do this? Well, we've talked elsewhere in Proverbs where it talked about making your father and your mother proud of you. Well, the same thing, by acting wise. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may reply to him who reproaches me. See, it's really easy for people to judge a parent by their children, and there's often truth to that, but in the end, each child makes their own decisions. But the parents are a huge part of the decisions children make, even as, I would say, older teens and young adults. It's really not until after that people start truly separating themselves from the influence of their parents, and sometimes not even then. Sadly, I would say many times, not even then. So, be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may reply to him who reproaches me. Somebody says, oh yeah, well, your family's nothing but trouble. Oh, really? Well, I mean, my son's over here doing the right thing and living a life that's pleasing to God and helping the poor, not gossiping, and so on and so on. Like, I don't understand how you're saying, and not even railing an accusation at the other person, just saying, look, I don't understand how you're saying that my family is bad when this is the result of my family, right? So that I may reply to him who reproaches me. That one's pretty obvious. All right, verse 12. A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. Kind of like if someone was searching for you and you hide, right? It's like, nope, not here, right? A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty. So this is the idea of having the wisdom to see ahead of time, right? Ooh, if I go down that path, that's going to be bad, right? I don't drink alcohol, not because alcohol is wrong. The Bible says getting drunk is wrong, but I don't drink alcohol not because it's wrong to have a sip of alcohol or to have a glass or whatever. I don't do it because my dad is a drunk. And I don't want to go down that path. And I was reminded recently, yeah, but that's your own path. Yes, that's true. But why even take a step on a path that I know could lead to that when there's no need to? Now, emotionally and all of that, yes, I had to go down paths that I didn't want to, that could have ended up badly, because you can't not heal emotionally. Well, you can, but you can't not deal with your emotions. But I don't need to drink, so I don't go down that path because I don't want to end up being tempted or potentially ending up in that same place. A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty. And naive means not thinking that it can happen to you or not understanding the potential consequences. Somebody who just doesn't get it. All right, verse 13. I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I've covered this in other Proverbs as well as other videos, but the concept here in verse 13 is that there are consequences to stupid decisions. So verse 13, take his garment when he becomes surety for a stranger, and then the second part of it, and for an adulterous woman hold him in pledge. The concept here is when you make stupid decisions, there are consequences. And check out my video on natural consequences. It basically answers this question. There's a whole video just on that. Also, check out Genesis chapter 38, I believe it was. You can check out that video here where it's talking about Judah and Tamar. And that's another example, especially of the second half of verse 13. Basically, there are consequences when you make a stupid decision. That's essentially what it's talking about here in verse 13. So I'll let you go check out those resources instead of repeating all of that information here. In verse 14, he who blesses his friend with a loud voice early in the morning, it will be reckoned a curse to him. And not just a friend, but any parent that has a toddler. Let me tell you, the morning is not my favorite time with toddlers. This morning in particular, my wife is at work, so she's already gone by the time the kids wake up. I think my little one woke up, probably heard mommy leaving because it was the you-know-what crack of dawn this morning. Our kids usually sleep in. I say that I've trained them well, and I think that I have, but I think our kids also just naturally sleep a little later than some, but whatever the case, they're usually not the 6 a.m. risers. But this morning, my little one comes in, and she crawls up into bed. She doesn't sleep with us, by the way. That's a parenting no-no in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Some of you are going to get mad at me for that one. I think that's a major parenting no-no. So let me know what you think of that in the comments, and let me know, do you want me to do a video just on that subject? Let me know in the comments. By the way, as I've said in several videos, don't forget any action that you take on a YouTube video, hitting like, hitting subscribe, turning that bell notification to all, commenting, sharing, anything that you do on a video helps that channel grow because YouTube goes, hey, there's value here because people are actually taking a moment to do something with this video, so please do. Let me know in the comments. But this morning, little one, in the morning when they wake up, they're allowed to come into my room and into our room and join us, because we'd rather them come to us than go throughout the house and wreak havoc. So sure enough, little one wakes up. I hear the door pop open. Her door makes a pop when it opens. I hear the door pop open. I'm like, oh boy, it's early. But she'll usually lay there quietly. Not this morning. This morning it was, Daddy, I love you, and all kinds of stuff. And the parenting news like, oh, that's sweet. But the not parenting news like, shut it, right? And then she started banging me on the head playfully. And it's like, yeah, sleep is over. He who blesses his friend with a loud voice in the morning, it will be reckoned a curse to him. Don't do that to your friends, right? If you're not 100% sure your friend turns their volume off at night, don't text them or call them late at night or early in the morning. Don't go banging on your neighbor's door in the middle of the night unless it's a true emergency, right? I think that one's self-explanatory, but I also thought that was a funny story, and I just wanted to vent for a minute that happened. All right, verse 15 and verse 16, 15 and 16 go together. A constant dripping on a day of steady rain and a contentious woman are alike, and it's that idea of just drip, drip, drip. I think about the faucet that leaks, even cartoons and sitcoms make fun of the leaky faucet. Drip, drip, drip. Some of you are cringing right now because of that. Let me know in the comments, did that make you cringe? Right? A constant dripping on a day of steady rain and a contentious woman are alike. They will put you on edge. Remember, Solomon is warning his son. This is Solomon teaching his son. That's why all the examples are male to female. The inverse, of course, is also true. He who would restrain her restrains the wind. The phrase that's not in the Bible, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, I did a video on that too, so check out that video. I go fairly in-depth there. But he who would restrain her restrains the wind and grasps oil with his right hand, right? I mean, try grasping oil by holding and squeezing it in your hand. It's not going to happen. Try to stop the wind from blowing. It's not going to happen. Trying to control a contentious woman. And men, by the way, men tend to shut down. Not all men, but stereotypically, men tend to shut down when they're upset. So that's why these examples, I believe, are typically women. Not just that Solomon, but I mean just examples in any area of human life. It's usually women that get the bad rap for this contentious, striving after the wind stuff. It's because men tend to shut down when they're upset, and women want to fix it when they're upset. And men get the rap for wanting to fix it, but the way that women communicate, they want to be heard. They're two great books, by the way. At this moment, they are not going to be affiliate links, but maybe by the time the video becomes live or later on they will be. So I'll put links down in the description. Two books that you should check out. One is called For Men Only, the other is called For Women Only. And in these books, it actually addresses, okay, For Men Only is, hey men, read this book if you want to understand women better, and vice versa. Women, if you want to understand men better, read the book For Women Only. I recommend reading your book a couple of times and then read the opposition. It will greatly help and change the way that you communicate with the opposite sex. Both sides can be understood contrary to popular meme opinion. It just takes a little effort. But that's not today's video. That's not the point. The point here is avoid being in a relationship with somebody like that. And of course, don't be somebody like that, because the end is not going to be happy for either person. All right, guys, as always, if you appreciate this ministry and content and you want to help the channel grow, interact. And one of the best ways to do that, make sure you hit that like button. If you've not previously, hit subscribe, turn that bell notification to all so you don't miss any future videos. And if you do want to support us financially, there is a link down in the description. You can, of course, do that. All gifts are tax deductible. This is a 501c3, so please feel free to do that. Even $1 or $2 a month adds up and truly helps our ministry. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much, and God bless.